West Ham are in a European final, and we stress that. It's a wonderful achievement. It sure is a wonderful achievement. The last European final was the 1975-76 Cup Winners' Cup final. They lost on that occasion to Anderlecht, but they will go to Prague, and it's the Europa Conference League final. But having said that, and we're loath to do it, but we are obliged to do it. There was considerable unrest in the stands at the end of the game. And what did we see? We saw some West Ham players getting caught up in it. And now one wonders, are they implicated? Will the authorities be after them, players like Antonio Downs, Benrahma, to ask them for an account of their part in the fray? And the fray was considerable. But undoubtedly, from what we've seen online, it's AZ fans, hooded for the most part, going up staircases, looking for trouble at the end of it. And the implications now could well be serious for this Dutch club. We've got a couple of calls into fans' organisations of AZ, and who knows, they may come to air with us. They're communicating with me this morning anyway, I can tell you. 03717 223344. For any fans who were there last night, West Ham fans now back in London, who want to give us their account of what they witnessed. And Steph, I think you're a West Ham fan who was there last night. Am I right? Good morning.
Good morning to you. Good morning all. Yes, we're on our way back from Alkmaar this morning. We were one of the 900 fans that were actually in the official away end, and we were caged in, and we could not move. We were held back after the game. We watched it all kicking off in the, I'll call it, corporate and friends and family section, and we wondered why actually the players didn't come straight over to us, and now obviously realised why. There was one guy, Nosey, who was at the top of the stairs. He's a West Ham fan in that section. He was holding back a sea of ultras, hooded yobs coming at them up the stairs. There was no security, no police in that stadium. It was a contrast from, say, Frankfurt, where we had riot police with shields and helmets in the stadium ready for trouble. Now, the AZ stadium should have known there was going to be problems, because we saw ultras in Alkmaar before the game. They were in pubs. We were told not to go to certain areas before the game and to go straight to the fan park. We know that there was trouble because the ultras were broken up by the police, and they were walking off down through the town centre when I was coming back having got something to eat. So we know that there was trouble before the game. And I spoke to one of the MPS that travelled with West Ham, and they were all on the lookout. So we knew, and Alkmaar knew there was going to be trouble. However, there was nothing in the ground whatsoever apart from these inane stewards who really did not have a clue how to behave under these circumstances. They weren't trained, they didn't have the proper credentials, and it was an accident waiting to happen, a big accident. From our end, in the cage section, we were clapping the AZ normal fans, the normal supporters like us. They were clapping us, we were clapping them. Fair play, it was sportsmanlike, but we were held back about half an hour after the ground because the ultras were waiting in their stand for us, and they gave us buses back to the train station and to Amsterdam Central.
It all sounds extremely unruly. Steph, you're Stuart Pearce this morning.
Steph, obviously, I know that the club really appreciate the support, the travelling support and whatever. Just looking forward to the final, I know there'll be very limited tickets available for both sets of fans. It's a small ground, and I can imagine the Hammers fans travelling in massive numbers as well. Do you think that that's going to be an issue going forward for the final?
I think it's going to be better than it was because it's a neutral venue. I think the problem that you might find is if teams based in Prague decide that they want to have a pop at West Ham. That's the difference, because where you've got home teams, whatever country, and you see if it's Fiorentina and West Ham, if you then add Prague fans into the mix, the Prague ultras think, oh, we're going out to have a pop at either Fiorentina or West Ham. Of course, the fans there are going to want to defend themselves. If you're sitting in a bar in Frankfurt and suddenly a load of Frankfurt ultras come at you, you're going to defend yourself. You're not going to roll over and say, come and have a throw a chair at my head. You know, the problem is going to be not so much between Fiorentina and West Ham. I think the problem might be the Prague supporters coming into the mix.
Oh, that's all you need. That's all you need, isn't it? Steph, listen, safe journey back, because it sounds that it gets seriously out of hand last night. Before we hit the break, here's David, who's another West Ham fan. David, were you there?
Yeah, I was, Jim. We've literally just got off the plane at Gatwick. I sat next to a guy on the plane who was in that area, and everyone's saying the same thing. Lack of police. Before the game, I just heard the lady on the call before me, lack of police. You've got the stewards in the ground. We're caged up like animals, which we had in Seville. We had it in Frankfurt, which was a joke last year. And again this year, and after the game as well. I mean, we didn't get back to our hotel till 2:30 in the morning, and it was just so poorly organised. You talk to these supporter services sort of guys that are on the ground on behalf of the club, and they're brilliant, they're great to talk to, but they all say the same thing. We are at the mercy of the local police, and the club, UEFA, got to liaise with these local police forces. It's a joke. It was too late. When the police came into the ground, it was too late. It had already happened. This big row would come down. I'm sure everyone's seen the videos on social media. And people were just left vulnerable because of the lack of police. The stewards didn't really want to know. And then, as I say, after the game, we were just kept in caged like animals. It's a joke.
David, listen, thanks for the call. Simon, it seems that it was a very nasty situation for what we're hearing from Steph, from David, and others trying to call through here. I think a major incident has been avoided here.
The assertions that people weren't trained properly, didn't have the quality to be able to do it, we don't know that. We haven't heard AZ's version of events at this moment in time to understand what their stewards did and didn't do.
Right.
But again, you have to look at this. This isn't a group stage game where UEFA can't be across every single detail. These are showpiece events. These are semi-finals for one of their big tournaments. And you'd like to think that they would have the prerequisite amount of intelligence to suggest. We've seen situations in Dutch football. We've seen recently there's been a lot of altercations coming on the pitch. So we know there's a temperature potentially in these games. There's also allegations that are bouncing around that West Ham fans last week were a little bit at it with some of the AZ Alkmaar families and families and officials. So retribution comes into play. But if there was an issue in London last week where there was a little bit of an issue, and I'm not suggesting it was, I'm just following what social media has said in this few instances, and what the AZ Alkmaar manager said last night after the game when describing the events. He described events back in London. That would have been intelligence that surely would have flowed through into that environment to say, OK, we can't have a repeat of that situation last night, however big or small, last week, however big or small it was. You've got to look at the professionalism of these circumstances, because if those allegations are right and the policing wasn't sufficient, the stewarding wasn't qualified enough, you have to ask yourself why and whose responsibility is it? Because ultimately, if UEFA put on a tournament and it gets to the semi-final stage, or whatever stage, it's still not excusable, but a semi-final stage of a showpiece event, why wouldn't you have the prerequisite amount of security? Have we not learnt the lessons? Did we not understand what happened in the European Championships under UEFA watch? Did we not watch the Champions League last year?
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.